welcome everyone to Product of Series by Pragmatic Leaders. We are glad to see you all here. Before we start today's session, I would like to take a moment and thanks Priya for joining us today in this session. And I would also like to introduce Pragmatic Leaders a little bit. At Pragmatic Leaders, you all are part of global family of aspirational professionals who proactively help each other and are invested in each other's career growth. Pragmatic Leaders functions like a full stack global career accelerator that rests on three core pillars. Pillar one is educate. We help you upskill via our proven courses and professional industry coaches. Pillar two is engage. We run a global community of product managers on Slack with access to online and offline meetups across the globe. Pillar three is employ. We operate a job platform and dedicated interview preparation courses to help you crack your dream job. So, along with longer duration of job guarantee programs. With that note, let's begin the session now. Priya has already joined us. Welcome and thank you, Priya, once again for joining us today. I'm sure everyone here is super excited for today's session. This session today will dwell deep into one of the most pressing questions in product management, that is finding the right problem to solve. So we'll discuss the principles of product management with Priya. As you all might know, Priya is a seasoned product manager. She has a breadth of experience in B2B and B2C platforms. She has built a lot of amazing products for brands like Twitter, Amazon, and Microsoft. So, Priya, without taking much of your time, I would like to hand over the session to you.
Thank you, Piyush, for the introduction. Hello, everybody. Very excited to be here. My name is I'm a product manager at Twitter. I've been with Twitter for close to about 3 years. Prior to this, I was a product manager at Amazon. I was a product manager at Microsoft, but I started my career as an engineer, and I worked my way through as a tech lead at Microsoft for about 7 years, working on a variety of enterprise and developer products at Microsoft. And at Amazon, I worked a lot on the retail platform and also on advertising products. And at Twitter, pretty much worked across all the organizations within the company and a breadth of products within the company in my role as a product manager and also as a technical program manager who oversaw a lot of complex strategic projects across the company. So with that, so I'll just start my presentation. So today we will just go over some of the nitty-gritty principles of the product management. So I think the first thing I just want to go over is how do we find the right problem to solve? Because everything starts with the customer. As a product manager, you're responsible for solving the customer problems and needs and adding a customer value through the solutions you plan and deliver. So here, as a product manager, one of the more core essential skills is kind of having that customer pulse and being obsessed about what are the customer needs and what are the solutions I'm developing to solve those customer needs. And while identifying the customer needs, you also need to be able to connect the dots and able to prioritize which are the most important customer needs that will I should pick before going to the drawing board and trying to brainstorm solutions and trying to deliver a multitude of solutions before kind of knowing any kind of customer needs. So with that, so once you develop the customer needs, you have to develop and set the success measure against all your customer needs. So what is the some of the metrics that I can draw to that will help me know that I am heading in the right direction of solving the customer needs. And once you kind of establish these things up front, then you start building and you evaluate the solution against the customer needs and start improving and iterating against the customer problem and the needs. And once while doing all of this, some of the another core skill of a product manager is how do you drive execution? Okay, if I identify the customer needs, you've kind of come up with a plan for I have a solution A, B, C that I think will solve this customer needs. Now I have to work with a multitude of stakeholders to kind of go and tackle these customer problems and needs and building solutions. So how do I go about doing that? So that's basically the agenda today. And once I go over some of these aspects, I'll leave some time for Q&A at the end of the session. So with that, I'll start with how do we find the right problem to solve, right? So typically in throughout our product, managing a product, one of the good things is to have some kind of like framework or methodology or process to go about identifying the customer problem and developing solutions to address that customer problem, right? So it all starts with the customer, as I said before, and then it starts with like your customer research, a kind of like going and figuring out like who are your customers and what are your customer needs and the problems, and kind of like having a prioritization framework to prioritize what are the customer needs that I should prioritize the top, right? And then once you define that, you develop a hypothesis. I'll come to like what that hypothesis is in a bit. And then you kind of validate without even like building. So what is the simplest way I can test the hypothesis that I developed in my previous step? And once you kind of do that validation and gain some confidence and conviction that you're solving the right customer problem and you're heading in the right direction, then you actually go and start building your actual MVP. And then once you start developing the MVP, you kind of gather the success metrics, evaluate them, and then you kind of keep iterating on your feature set. So this is kind of a process we follow, and like a lot of the big companies that I work with. And this is a good framework and a structure to have, right? So I'll go like a little bit deep into each of these steps. So let's start with like how do you identify the customer needs? So with respect to that, you always like start with the customer research. And as a product manager, there are, as you know, like there are various flavors of product managers. You could be a product manager for a consumer product, or you could be a product manager for an infrastructure product, or you could be a product manager for a B2B product, right? So there are like various flavors of product management, but all of these different flavors of the product management, the core is the customer. So whoever your customer is, whether it's going to be like an external customer or an internal customer, you kind of start with the customer research. And how do you typically do customer research? Again, there are so many methodologies and mechanisms to do customer research. And so some of the ways that we do is you might typically have the help or luxury of a customer researcher, a research team at your disposal that will help with like, going out to like different customers and doing customer interviews. That is one way. So the other way is you also like can send like customer surveys in some form, whether it's like in your app. If you have an app, if your product is an app, you can have like in-app surveys, or you kind of use some other various third-party survey mechanisms to kind of like send survey and gather feedback from the customers and stuff like that. And you can also like use your data. You can have this is all like the qualitative aspect of the customer research, and in addition you also have like the quantitative mechanism where you can like just go at like all the prior art around like all the customer data you have, like which is already at your company. Or you might have to like scout through different mechanisms where you can go and gather this customer data, like that it gives you more input on like who's your customer and what are their needs and circumstances they are in, right? So for instance, let's say when you're doing this is like one a good story or an example where like one of the customer researchers before the iPod days, they were just traveling in the Bay Area's sub, and then they would BART, and they were like just encounter like somebody carrying a radio CD case, right? And then the CD case was falling apart, and so they were like the customer was like, I wish I had a duct tape, right? And the customer researcher was curious and asked like, so what would you do if you had a duct tape, right? And the customer answered saying that hey, like I think I'll just like use it to put all of this thing together. But that's actually not the customer need, right? This is what the customer is articulating, that that's what he wants to do, that what he wish he had a duct tape. But the actual need is implied need is like he want like he enjoys music, and he carries a CD case to kind of like listen to the music when he's traveling in a BART or like when he's outside and stuff. So that's his core need, and he wants that to have like a seamless experience in listening to his music when he's outside, right? So that's kind of his like core need. So when you do customer research, you don't like kind of directly just kind of just map one-on-one to like what customer is saying. You kind of like have to go a little bit deeper and dive deeper and see like what is the implied need behind what the customer is trying to do, right? So, and we have this use a concept of like J2BD, which is called this jobs to be done framework. It's one of the framework that we use within Twitter to kind of articulate what the customer circumstances, jobs, and needs, and what are the ways they could hire Twitter, or they could like fire Twitter, right? So you can you can kind of use some methodologies and framework like that when you're developing the product, where you can kind of establish what is the customer trying to do, right? And what is the underlying need. And there are like two kinds of needs. One is like the functional need and the emotional, right? So the functional need is they want to like do something, they want to like perform something, they want to do trying to do a job, right? And the emotional need is like they want to like feel a certain way about like whatever they're trying to do. So kind of like start with like who your customers are, and like what are they trying to, and what is the context. So once that is done, and you kind of try to like list out, okay, these are the 5 customers, and this is how I prioritized, and if I go after solving these customer needs, and this is how I will measure success, right? So I'll just give an example with how we formulate that. So once you do all of the customer research, the next thing you do is like develop a hypothesis. And what is a hypothesis? It's kind of like you will have a theory or a hunch, and then you kind of build some success metrics around it, kind of help you evaluate how we are solving the customer problem, right? So for instance, say for this similar use case or the customer need I was articulating before, if we try to like build a solution for it, so if we build X, we say like it will require Y because the customer will be able to do a performance job better. So kind of articulate how we are adding customer value with a feature, and how will you like measure it, right? So and then like some of the things to keep in mind while developing this hypothesis is not make it like too broad, right? It's not like if you build an iPod, right, and it will result, that's like too broad. iPod is like too big. So how can you make it like as granular as possible in a very like specific and testable and a measurable way? So whenever you like have an hypothesis, you should be able to prove whether it's true or false. So it has to be like super specific, and developing a hypothesis is an art. So once you kind of establish this hypothesis against your prioritized customer needs, then you start like building evidence to say like, hey, am I prioritizing this hypothesis in the right way? So how do you build a hypothesis? You can use like simple validation or testing methods. Like you can still do like customer interviews post this hypothesis development, and kind of like gather evidence on how the customers would feel about like having such a feature or a solution, right? And then you can also like once you can do interviews, customer interviews, or you can build like lightweight prototypes, or you can do some other like qualitative analysis to kind of see whether this is the right hypothesis to tackle first in this particular problem space, right? So once you kind of build evidence and then like test it with your lightweight solution, then you can kind of update your hypothesis. Maybe like my X has to be like tweaked a little bit, maybe like my Y has to be tweaked a little bit, right? And then so then based on these, my customer value will kind of like be tweaked in a different way, right? So you kind of like do this iterative hypothesis process, and once you do that, so while doing that, it's very important to kind of establish your success measure very crisply, right? So here, when you say like it will result in Y, it has to be like a very measurable metric. So if I say like I'm going to build a feature, it will result in X% customer or Y% customer retention, then that is like a very like specific measure. And then even the specific measure, it'll be like good to have some kind of like baseline if you are able to, or you can kind of some kind of, customer satisfaction score if you don't have like any like quantitative metrics. And even if you have a customer satisfaction score, it'll be good to have like a baseline and then a kind of measure, like what is your solution, how is your solution improving or like not improving the particular metric, which will provide you more confidence on whether this particular solution is heading in the right direction of solving the customer problem and needs. So when you do the development of the hypothesis, it'll be good to have like a very measurable outcome. So that'll help you like inform whether you're heading in the right direction in terms of solving a customer problem or a need. So another thing to keep in mind is not, as I said, like not to have these kind of hypotheses like too broad. It'd be good to always have like a very granular and a very specific hypothesis that you'll be able to test. And even when developing a measurable outcome, it'll be good to have it like very specific. So for instance, if I say like I'm building so features, one of the features we build within Twitter is like fleets, as you know. And then if we say it will result in an say Y% increase in daily active users, or in terms of adoption, if you're using an adoption metric. So it'll be good to know that I'm choosing that particular Y% increase like very consciously. So when you kind of build a prototype or something to test it out, and then when the numbers come in, you should be able to like tell with conviction that we are heading in the right direction. So even it's very important to choose that Y% increase metric or like a Y% decrease metric in a way that it gives you clarity on whether you're heading in the right direction. So if that particular Y% increase or decrease is leading to arguments within your team and stakeholders, and it's not like giving clarity on whether you're heading in the right direction, then probably like you have to like go back to the hypothesis drawing board and kind of revise this particular metric and the way you have like formulated the hypothesis. So once you kind of like do this, iterate it and gain more confidence and conviction that you're heading in the right direction, then you start actually building the actual MVP. And then once you build the MVP, again, you formulate like various customer feedback mechanisms, whether it's customer satisfaction score or in-app survey, or you have like some other, pilot or beta customers with whom you're testing this MVP. So once you kind of gather all the feedback, you iterate on the solution and kind of add more features iteratively, and then keep evaluating whether you're kind of addressing the customer problem and whether you have solved it, right? So this is the kind of a product development process that kind of helps you be very agile and very catered to the market and customer needs, and then try to focus you on the right customer problem, and gives you like a very iterative conviction on whether you're solving the customer problem in the right direction. So with that, let's move on to the next aspect of product management, which is driving execution, right? So here, while driving execution, it's a very important skill once you kind of establish, like, hey, I know the pulse of the customer, and I know this is what we have to do. And then you have like multitude of stakeholders, sometimes it's just not like technical stakeholders, you have a number of non-technical stakeholders as well, whom you have to interact with to deliver the value or the right solution for the customer. So when doing that, there are like three aspects to keep in mind, like, always like be the voice of the customer in interacting with your stakeholders, be it internal or external. So for that, what you have to always keep in mind is you have to have a deep understanding of the customer needs. Like everything starts with the customer problem and the customer needs. And then it's very important to have the right prioritization of the customer needs, right? And then and again, like with respect to prioritization, as I mentioned, there is product management is about like making a lot of like decisions, like micro and macro decisions, right? And then you have to prioritize in like different phases of product development. So as I walk through like the different steps, I talked about like prioritization with respect to the customer needs, and also prioritization while developing the hypothesis, and you'll have like prioritization when it comes to like the feature sets and the solutions as well, right? So with all of this, like it all goes back to that core of like how well you understand the customer needs, right? And then it's a process that you kind of like where you gain more confidence, like where you have a lot of data and you kind of like put all things together and kind of like have a framework of customer needs, a prioritized list of customer needs, and a prioritized list of hypothesis, right? And then now you have like the prioritized list of solutions that will solve that particular customer needs. So it always like goes back to the customer needs, and then while delivering the customer needs is always like important to have established a success metric where you'll be able to like measure whether you're driving the right solutions and you're driving the right customer value against those customer needs. So whenever you're interacting with the stakeholders, you always need to like bring it back to the customer, like throughout the feature or the product development. So whether it's be it like you're building a delivery plan, talking to engineers, asking for estimates and feasibility, or talking to like marketing on like what is a go-to-market strategy, or talking to legal about like different like privacy and the security concerns, it always like goes back to the customer. And then once that you have that pulse, and then you kind of like be the voice of customer when you interact with like a lot of different stakeholders. It's also very important like how well you interact with your immediate tech stakeholders or the engineering teams whom you are collaborating with to deliver the solution for the customer. So, and then in terms of like the engineering stakeholders, there are again like various nuances with that. So if the product is say a consumer product, and you're somebody like who's being the face of the customer and being the voice of the customer and providing more clarity to the team about these customers who are external to the company. But sometimes if you're an infrastructure PM, then your customers are internal, and engineers actually have a more customer pulse than you because they interact with a lot of the internal engineering stakeholders more than you. Right. So it's kind of like a balancing act where you kind of like, again, like be the voice of the customer, because like sometimes the engineers, they kind of tend to delve into the engineering or the technical details. So it's always up to you, again, to be the voice of that internal customers as well. Again, if you're a B2B PM, then again, your customer is a third-party developers, or could be like developers inside your company, and how you kind of be the voice of that customers, the customers who are outside the company, the third-party customers, and the customers who are internal to your company. So again, like there are like different nuances or flavors of customers as well. And then like now bringing it back to how do you deal with the ambiguity. You get like a lot of this information about the customer. There are like a lot of things floating around, but it's the job of a product manager to connect the dots and bring that clarity to the team, and on what is our vision, what is the direction, and crisply articulating like what is that customer problem and the value that we are tackling, right? So once you drive to that clarity, then you kind of set the direction for the team, like with the process that we spoke about, set the direction for the team, like, hey, like this is the prioritized list of customer needs, this is a prioritized list of hypotheses, and then you build, and like these are like the this is the MVP we're going to tackle after, and these are like the additional features backlog that we can like tell once we tackle the MVP and learn more about the customer problems and the needs and the value that we are adding. So you kind of set the direction and provide like a structured delivery plan to the team. And even building a delivery plan is an art where you have to like interact with like different stakeholders and kind of get all the costing information for all the different things that you want to deliver. It involves like cost from the engineers, it involves cost from the marketing, like legal and other comms and communications and other stakeholders, right? So once you kind of build that delivery plan, and you kind of start iterating on that, and then like keep all the stakeholders in the loop, right? And it's always like very good to like over communicate and provide and keep everybody on the same page, align all the stakeholders on like where we are going and what state we are in and where we are going and what did we learn new and what are the next steps with respect to like in delivering the customer value against the customer needs. And it's always like very, as a product manager, it's good to have like a service mentality where you always like try to listen and understand the different perspectives and always like connect it back to the customer, right? And when you share your perspective, you always like connect it back to the customer, but it's also very important to listen and understand your stakeholders to gain like the diverse perspectives. So, and it's also throughout this delivery process, it's also important to connect what you're doing to your company goals. You know, your company goals could be revenue, or your company goals could be like earning trust from your customers, or your company goal could be like, customer growth or adoption, or your company goal could be like customer retention. So based on whatever your company goal is, you always have to connect whatever you're doing to your company goals. And always like think big. You work backwards from the customers. That's number one. And the second thing is work backwards from the long-term value and the impact, right? And typically, if you're at like a senior level and working like a lot of bigger and complex products, you will typically tend like at least a 2 or 3 or 5 year strategy, and then you kind of work backwards from that and kind of do the incremental solutions and incremental wins and incremental success, customer success against that long-term goals and impact that your company has set out to deliver. So just to round it up all, so we just went over identifying the right problem to solve, that starts with defining the customer problem, developing hypothesis, and doing the validation even without building, using like simple testing methods. And then building your MVP and evaluating and improving and iterating on all the solutions that you set to deliver, solve the customer problem. And then in terms of driving execution, it's important to always to be the voice of the customer. And number two is like facilitating for your team and the stakeholders involved. And then like keeping your company goals and objectives in mind, and how do you help build a better business with all the solutions you're catering for your customer needs. So that's pretty much I had, and then now I can open it up for Q&A.
Hi, Priya. Vanditya. Thank you for that great presentation. I just have a quick doubt to ask you. When you say about hypothesis, right? How do you convert your hypothesis into customer needs, and then how do you translate it into a revenue stream?
So as I said, I gave you an example, right? So when I say the customer needs, I told you when you formulate the hypothesis, you say like you're building a solution that will result in a success metrics, and because it will meet a customer need, right? So when you formulate a hypothesis, you always map it to the customer need. So that is number one. And then number two, when I say like about the revenue and stuff, if your objective, if your core objective is revenue, then you kind of formulate that particular success metric against the revenue. You can kind of like formulate it in terms of revenue if that is your core goal. Does it make sense?
Thank you.
Hi Priya, this is Vivek. I have a question. My question is like, once you arrive at a KPI, let's say a success metric that you want to engage the user more predominantly in the application or in the product, how do you approach this engagement process? Like when you do the market research or when you get the results, do you get to know what exactly you're looking at when you are talking about the factor like user engageability? So how do you brainstorm and how do you arrive at what needs to be given to the user?
Yeah. So with respect to the customer engagement, it's typically a retention metric, right? So if retention metric is your core objective or a goal that you want to like set out for yourself, then when you start like the customer problems and the needs, you kind of like see like why the customers want to like use your product, or why they don't want to use your product. So why are they hiring or firing your product? You kind of like go deep into that and kind of try to understand like why the customers want to use your product and why they don't want to use your product. So kind of like articulate all of that, and then that will translate into the customer needs, right? And so if you go to if I talked about the J2BD, the jobs to be done framework. So if you use that framework and say, like, for instance, if you're, as I alluded to the CD example, if iPod is like a solution, and I mean, like what they're trying to do is like they want to enjoy the music, and they want to be like very seamless and very easy and convenient, in an easy and convenient form. They want to enjoy music in an easy and convenient form when they are like out traveling, right? So that's basically the circumstances. And when you look at like their functional and their emotional needs, you kind of like break it down. And they say like, say if you're developing a product that is not like iPod, like you're trying to like test a product, and you want to like, at first grow the customers, you want to like retain the customers, you go back to that customer research and try to understand what they're trying to do, and why they're trying to hire you, or why they're trying to fire you, basically why they want to use you and why they don't want to use you. So once you understand that customer need, then you can go and see like, hey, what does your product currently do that is not like meeting that customer need, right? And then you kind of like go back to very like a simple hypothesis and see like, hey, this is a particular thing that we're not doing well. So if can I do something about it? So if you develop some solution, like that will cater to that customer need that we're not meeting today, and then you formulate like hypothesis saying that, hey, this is going to like increase the retention or decrease the retention in such a way. So kind of like build the hypothesis, test it out, and see whether you're heading in the right direction, right? So once, say maybe like you're building some feature that's actually meeting the that you think you will meet the customer need, and then if your retention metric is decreasing, that means like whatever solution you came up with is not the right one, right? So then you go back to the drawing board and see like, hey, what is the next solution that I could try that I think will meet the customer need? And if that particular solution B is increasing the retention, then and meeting the customer need, then like you have more conviction, okay, like maybe this is the right solution and the approach that I should be taking in order to like increase my customer retention and engagement. Does it make sense?
Perfect. Thank you.
So we have few questions in chat section as well.
Piyush, may I ask one question to Priya?
Sure.
Hi Priya, like thank you for this session, right? I'm not so much known to the product development and its A to Z part, so I had just confusion. Like I've just started in my tech journey, and I've just learned that like before you start something, you need to go into research, right? So while we make a survey form, right, or while we start with a survey or the research part, so what are the 3 points that we always need to keep in mind? Because sometimes our survey extends beyond the time limit a user gives upon filling a survey or filling a research form. So that's I believe that's one of the point where we as a company needs to think about, or or from a customer point of view. So how do you at big companies test your product at very initial point? How do you frame your questions in a way that's going to benefit or that's going to help you out into if the customer is going, if this customer is going to be our revenue based customer, is just a more of a promotional based customer, a difference between that. Hope am I clear in this?
Yeah, I think you've put in like a lot of questions there. And so one of the things is with the customer research, it actually really depends on your product, what your product, and I said like know who your customers are. And then in terms of like formulating the questions, it's a very good thing. I think we also have like a lot of templates and methodologies which our customer researchers use to kind of formulate those questions. Again, it goes back to the customer circumstances and needs. And even before going and talk to the customers, you can do like a lot of research online based on like what your competitors are doing and what are the market trends. And when you study the customers, you don't have to like always talk to the customer. And sometimes you have like a lot of prior art that exists either internally or externally online, where like some of the researchers have already done like a lot of research. So you kind of like score through a lot of this information and connect the dots and kind of formulate like the questions. Like again, you have like certain kind of hunch on what are the customer problems and the needs, and you as a product manager, you know about your product, right? And you kind of like do all this other qualitative research outside of like, you know, like the actual customer research, and try to like formulate the questions on what you think like are the customer needs and what are they trying to hire your product for or fire product for, right? So based on that, you formulate like a set of questions where you try to get to the core need, like, you know, what where it will help you identify what the customers are not telling you, right? Sometimes like when you, as I told, as I give an example, like when a customer says, I want a duct tape to hold my CD case together, but that's not actually like what they want. What they want is like something like more a core, or like more a core to their need than that, right? So how do you kind of like formulate the questions that will get to the core need than what they're articulating or saying explicitly, right? So you kind of like come up with like those set of questions, and then you don't have to like kind of pick so many customers, right? You can even like have a sample set based on like different the diverse set of customers that you're trying to like get the feedback from. And and sometimes if for instance I know like there are some challenges when you have like in-app survey, the customers may or may not like respond to it, right? Again, it really depends on the resources and number of people you can put on it to kind of like gather all that feedback, if it's like customer interviews and stuff like that. And in-app surveys, it's always like tricky, but how do you make it like seamless, right? For instance, when I use like an app, like we use Instacart in US to kind of do grocery deliveries, right? And they do have like a in-app feedback, and sometimes it's like mandatory. Like I cannot like get past the screen or like go to my next order until I provide feedback on my previous order. So there is like one of the mechanisms where they kind of like make it mandatory or like customary to provide get feedback from the customer before even placing that order. So even though it's like a little bit annoying, but they make it like very seamless, right? You know, I don't have to do like multiple clicks to kind of provide the customer feedback. It's like 2 or 3 clicks and then I'm like just done. But I've seen like other apps where they make it like so painful. They kind of like try to copy the same experience, but they make it like so painful where you kind of have to, even to answer one question, I have to go through like at least like n number of clicks before I can get to like the next question, right? So it also like depends the balancing act. It's up to the product manager to have that balancing act and make the decision, like, you know, like, okay, I need this customer feedback, but how can I make it like seamless and convenient and not like annoying the user where they might even like fire the product, right? So it's really like depends or based on like what your product is and what kind of customers and research and the problem space that you're trying to tackle, right?
Thank you so much, Priya. Thank you, Piyush. Thank you for giving the opportunity. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Hi, Priya.
Hi.
Right. Hi, Priya. This is Abhinav. I had a question which is similar to what one of the folks had asked in the chat. As a product manager, what are the skills or the basic skills that a person needs to be a product manager? Also, is it mandatory that you should be from a technical background in order to be a product manager?
No, you don't have to be a very technical to be a product manager. So as I said, like one of the core customer core skills is like you know, the product intuition and product thinking, which is all around the customer pulse, right? How good you are in, how passionate you are about like thinking about the customer problem and needs, and how passionate you are about like solving that customer problem and needs against your customers. So I would say like the number one skill is the product intuition and thinking, and being obsessive about like customer or passionate about the customers. That's number one. And the number two, like the technical skills is good to have, but it comes to the fore when you start interacting with like a lot of the engineering stakeholders, right? And it also depends on like what kind of product management are you doing. Like if your product management is an infrastructure product, then it's important to have like technical skills that is required of like a like a consumer product manager. Or if you're developing like B2B products, then that particular technical skill has more weightage than like a consumer product manager, right? So it really like depends on what kind of product manager you want to be. So there is B2C product managers, B2B product managers, there is like hardware product managers, there is IoT devices product management. So a lot of like different kinds of product management. So the technical skill comes to the fore only if you're dealing with like a very technical heavy product. But if you're like just dealing with some kind of a consumer app where you really have to be the know the customer pulse and be the voice of the customer, then the product intuition and thinking comes to the fore than a technical skill or a technical thinking, right? And but even in addition to all of this, the other important skill, as I said, is like being very good at execution. So it's good to have the ideas. You can know all the customer needs, ideas, and research. Now you have to work with like this n number of different stakeholders who also like humans and have like different personalities. How do you handle all manage the people and different personalities and kind of deliver the solution against all this, the ideas and the solution, the plans you had against the customer problem and needs. So I would say like it is not like.
Hi Priya, I'd like to ask a question.
Hi, yeah.
So how can you give a practical example of how you went from define to evaluate, whatever can be publicly said, like from one of the products that you had built?
Yeah. So yeah, a lot of the things we develop are initially like very internal. We just test it out internally, and then we test launch in like 1 or 2 markets, and then like we kind of start expanding or fanning out to different markets. So that's how we typically go about. So one of the examples we can give is we launched a feature on Periscope. How many of you are aware of Periscope? What Periscope is? Are you aware of what Periscope is? Yeah. So Periscope was actually not an original Twitter product. It was an acquired product. So it basically enables anybody to broadcast live. And one of the features that we built for us is the ability to invite up to 3 people to a live broadcast via just audio, right? So one of the hypotheses we had is around audio, right? So we were just like trying to test whether should we do like the full-fledged audio and video capability for the live broadcaster to invite up to 3 guests to a live broadcast, right? And then for us, one of the challenges was like providing the video capability was also going to be add to a lot of engineering cost, and it's going to like prolong our delivery timeline and the path. So with that, so we were trying to like make a decision. So one of the hypotheses we had was around the audio, that if we just like start with like a build an audio solution where we enable a particular live broadcaster to invite up to 3 guests via audio, then it will increase one of the hypotheses we had like a lot of metrics. So one of the metrics we had is the number of live broadcast, right? And also like we also had retention metrics. So we had like various metrics, the adoption of this particular feature and the retention of this feature. And then like because it is giving giving what is it solving for is a like making the broadcast more engaging, right? So we had like a lot of like customer needs and values around it. So that was like one example that I can tell. And we did have like some of the metrics moving in the right direction that validated our hypothesis, and we started like building iteratively on like a lot of very granular and nuanced features within that particular space.
Thanks a lot.
Priya, how was your experience different from working as product manager at Microsoft to that of a Twitter or any other service company that you might have worked before? So how is the product manager different from a product company to a service company?
Yeah, so I think even within Microsoft, Microsoft is like super diverse, right? They have like very diverse set of products. They have products within enterprise space, just a developer space. One of the products I was working on was Visual Studio in my engineering days, and there are products like Bing, which kind of caters to the consumer needs and also like B2B needs. And we also have like a lot of educational learning products, right? So I would say like within Microsoft, it's a very different because it's like a lot of mini small companies because they cater to like a lot of different products, right? And then the product development within Microsoft is like very different, where you have like the functions, even the role of the functions is like pretty different, where we had for instance we had like a product marketing which kind of like did a lot of this customer research and how do we position a particular product or like an organization's business goal against that product, and then they kind of like come to the product manager, and the product manager, it's kind of like starts with like laying out the requirements for that bigger the organizational objectives that we have, right? And that's how we went about building products. But in companies like Amazon, it works differently, where the product manager still like works on or different customer research, gathers data, understand what the customer wants. And then they had the notion of something called as PRFAQ, which you might have heard already, which is building like a press release with a set of frequently asked questions, where you kind of like, even before building anything, you work backwards from the customer and you kind of like pretend that you're releasing the product to the customer. And when you draft the press release, you kind of articulate what is a customer problem you're solving and what is a customer value it is adding. And you have like, again, like it kind of alludes to like a lot of the things we already spoke about, but in a different form, right? So that is the methodology or the process you had in Amazon. But with respect to Twitter, it's like different because it's a consumer product company and it has like, that's its core product. Twitter is its core product. And with that, what happens is, and Twitter has like, as I know, like it's a very uniquely positioned to be the conversational public conversation, where its primary goal and vision and mission is to be serve the public conversation. And as you know, like the public conversation is an interesting and challenging space because it's ever evolving, right? And then because the people who participate in the public conversation, there are a lot of challenges that comes with it. So one is like abuse, right? And then there are a lot of like political ramifications or impact that happens in the conversation, public conversation. And the public conversation sphere keeps changing depending on like different circumstances that happens in the world, the events that happens in the world. And with that, so what as a company or that we need to do is like be very agile and flexible on this changing public conversation, right? So with that, for us, a product development has to be like super agile and flexible, and we have to like constantly like learn about the customer needs, be agile about it, and then like do a lot of like testing of the hypothesis, where we evaluate like whether we are doing the right things to solve that ever evolving customer needs. So it's kind of like everything is like super different. All these companies I've worked with and the products I've worked with is very different, and the set of problems and challenges I've dealt with is also like very broad and vast, but I've learned a lot along the process. So does it give you an idea of like the different flavors?
Hi Priya, this is Soumya here. So far so good to hear about various different stuff. In extension to the question asked by one of my friend here, I would like to extend the question further down related to having a background on the software development or any other thing and then moving into the product management. As you mentioned, it is B2C and B2B, it varies. So considering that fact, let's say if we are starting with the product management from scratch and going further with due experience, even if it is customer centric, is it not the technical knowledge gives a boost up or contributes to your profile in means altogether as a whole?
So to paraphrase is your question on how do I go about venturing into product management from start if I'm new to the industry? Is that the question?
Yeah, and adding to that is the question is, even if I'm from a technical background, will the consideration, will that add any value in any sort of thing going further?
Sure. So I'll answer to the first one, which is just venturing into product management as a newbie. Again, so a lot of companies they do have a very junior level PM roles, but I think some companies they may not be open for very junior product managers because they would like to have some kind of industry experience for product managers to kind of like handle products big and small, right? So, so a lot of companies, and based on where you're looking, right? And if you go after the companies where they offer the junior PM roles, and it actually like really depends on like whether they'll give you a product of a small scope or a bigger scope. I've seen like both cases in a lot of different companies and also in my friends and colleagues companies as well, ex-colleagues companies. Where sometimes like the junior product managers get to handle like products of small scope, and sometimes if they're going into a startup and they are just given a startup which is open to like junior PMs, and they're like given like a bigger scope products and challenges as well, right? So again, like it all goes back to the fundamentals of a product manager, which is like the product intuition and thinking, and being passionate about the customers. So that is the core of a product manager. So so if you can build your muscle around that, like whatever form, as I said, like you can learn from the different product leaders in the industry, where various forums like in podcast or like trainings or like courses, as I mentioned before. And then you build that muscle, and then in terms of approaching it, and you can like kind of prove it, like with some of your side projects. If you're like new to product management, one of the things that you can do is you can kind of have like side or like hustle projects where you kind of develop an app and kind of like do the end-to-end app development, and kind of like use it as an example when you go for a new BPM interviews, right? And you can say like, hey, this is the app I've developed, and this is how I went about like identifying the customer problem, and this is what I came up with as a solution, and this is what I proved that I'm adding the customer value with whatever like this particular app I had. I'm just throwing an example, right? And then you kind of go through this whole end-to-end and kind of prove that in your experience when you go for like newbie PM interviews. That is one thing. And to answer to the second question, whether your technical background help, it will definitely help. And I said it really depends on what kind of product manager or product management roles you're aspiring for. And even whatever product manager role you're asking for instance, as I said, like when you deal with the technical stakeholders, your technical background is very important, right? So it's when you're talking to an engineer, it's very important to understand an engineer's mentality or their perspective and where they are coming from. So if you're talking about like some architecture and like how that particular design in an architecture is impacting your product decision, you need to have the technical background to understand that. It's number one. And different design trade-offs and the different solution, technical solution trade-offs. So you'll be able to have that conversation and understand an engineer's perspective if you have like a technical background. And the second thing is when the engineer is giving a costing and a feasibility, and when you're having that discussion with them, it'll be like very good to have a technical background to kind of able to relate to whether the engineer is on the same page with what you are trying to do, right? So for these two things, I think it's very important to have a technical background. But as I said, it's not like an absolute must. It's actually another muscle which you'll build along the way if you absolutely don't have any technical background.
Okay, thank you very much for the detailed information.
Hi Priya, thanks a lot for the nice session. Yeah, so I have this question, like while launching a product, let's say if I have 10 features in my pipeline, and would it be an ideal way, like if I launch with 4 or 5 features and get a user feedback, and then keep on iterating those features? Or should I launch with the 10 features and then based on the user's feedback, I upgrade those features? So what would be an ideal way?
Yeah, so I think if I had the time and the luxury, I'll go like deeper to understand what your product and what you're trying to do. But just on the higher surface level, so as I said, like I kind of went through the process, right? So it doesn't matter whether it's like a 10 features or 5 features. And the important thing for you to keep in mind is whether you're tackling the right customer problem, and whether like the 10 features or like 5 features that you're going after is addressing that customer need. So if you have like 10 features, and even if you do like 5 or 10, if it's not like towards solving the customer problem, then it really doesn't matter, right? You don't want to build something that nobody will use, right? And that's a waste of a lot of resources and time and effort and a lot of people. So it's important to, like, as I said, like it's important to start from connect all these features that you have like to the customer problem and need, and whether your feature set is going to add the right customer value. And then always like you always have to build the very the most MVP. Like that's why we have the concept of MVP, the minimum viable product, for you to test whether you're doing the right thing even before like tackling like 10 or like 100 features, right? So the quantity of features really doesn't matter. Does it make sense?
Yeah. So what should be the appropriate number of users that we should test with for the MVP? Like,
Again, as I said, it's circumstantial, right? It'll go back to what's your product and what's your customer base, and what are you trying to do. Again, even that requires a lot of thinking and analysis, right? If you're like say a startup and you're kind of like, again, there is a concept of customer segmentation, right? If you're like consumer products, say for instance you're developing a rideshare app in India, your customer is like your customer segmentation is super huge. You have a lot of different customer segments. Again, like as I said, like all your customer research, either qualitatively or quantitatively, will do like, hey, which are the customers that I'm going after? Say for instance, if you're developing this rideshare app and you like test it out in just like one region in India, right? And then you kind of like go deep into like, hey, how do I segment customers in this particular region? And then like once you segment the customers, then you prioritize like for the customers that you want to go after. Say the prioritization also starts with like who your customers are. So I talked about like prioritization at different levels. So when you're like launching like a very large scale and a complex product, again, like when you have like a lot of customer segments, you again have to prioritize and scope it to that customer segment, whom you want your product want to target to meet your product and the company goals as well. Does it make sense?
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thanks a lot, Priya. Thanks a lot, Piyush.
Okay, guys, so sorry for this, but we are very short on time and we cannot continue with more questions. If you have other questions, you can put it up on Slack and we can take it forward after this. So thanks a lot, Priya, for taking our time and conducting such an insightful session for pragmatic leaders. I'm sure everyone would have a lot of concrete takeaways from today's session.
Thank you, Piyush, for coordinating and organizing this, and thank you everyone for listening. And I hope it was useful and insightful. And I hope to see you in other forums. Thank you.